Hello YouTube land, and welcome to my new bike day. So, I went ahead and pulled the trigger on this monster. It is a Niner RIP9. Ta-da! It's a medium 29-inch wheel mountain bike with 150 millimeters of rear, a whopping 160 of front travel. And if you happen to notice, there's a lot of similarities on this bike from my old Diamondback. That's mainly because, well, I transferred a lot of parts over. Dropper all came from the Diamondback. The seat post clamp came from the Diamondback. Handlebars, brake assembly, shifter, stem cap. Now, there's also the wheels, but big difference on the wheels here. My Diamondback had a non-boost front end on it. This is boost front and rear. I had to have these wheels relaced at the local bike shop with a set of SRAM 900 hubs. See if I can spin that around so you can see those. There we are. So, no, they're upside down. Haha. Yeah, so SRAM 900 hubs. We have the torque cap, which is a RockShox proprietary thing. It SRAM design, it allows for more rigidity in the lower end of your forks here. Let's see. Rear hub, same thing, yep. Went to a SRAM 900 boost rear hub. Upgraded the rear rotors. Same brakes as I had before. The Dior's with the SLX IceTech pads. But went to a 180 millimeter rear rotor. That helped. I'm a bigger guy. I'm about 230 pounds. So that little extra rotor diameter gave me just that much more braking confidence. I have no other way to describe it, really. The rear cassette assembly. So on my Diamondback, that was a 1142. I went to an 1146 now. Didn't help a whole lot, not as much as I was anticipating, but it did help. Whereas before, for every one pedal stroke, now I have 2 pedal strokes, so it requires a little less effort to climb up the hills. That was also aided by this here. I went to a 30-tooth chainring from a 32. That was actually a friend of mine pointed that out to me, that I could possibly go smaller here to help aid in my climb. So I just sort of did a 2 for there and there. And yeah, like I said, 2 full pedal rotations for every 1 rotation that I used to have. So, I mean, yeah, in essence, yeah, it did help. Just, I don't know. I'm just out of shape. Anyways, so rear derailleur, that carried over from the Diamondback, my SLX rear derailleur. And pedals and crankset. Otherwise, everything else is brand new. Frame, fork. The stem is the same model that was on my Diamondback. This one's just shorter. I went from a 60 to a 40. A little more downhill inspired, more for an enduro feel. The grips are red, just like my old ones, but I went with Fabric brand. These are silicone grips. They are really good when you have your gloves on, but if you go bare hand and your hands get wet or damp at all, these things are slipperier than deer snot. Not fun. Yeah, so I mean, this is it. Same tires. Everything kind of like the Diamondback. Oh, I should touch base on the pedaling efficiency. So, coming from a short travel 29-inch mountain bike and going to this, which is, again, 150, 160 millimeters of travel, I was worried about the whole pedal efficiency thing. And a lot of people told me that the better the bike, the better the engineering goes into the design of the rear suspension section, the less issues you'll find with like pedal bob and things of that nature. They weren't kidding. So Again, short travel bike, 100 millimeters. That's what my Diamondback had in the rear end of travel. This has 150. It feels just like my Diamondback at 100 millimeters when I'm pedaling. No joke. The pedaling efficiency of this bike is amazing. And if I really want to take it a step further, just like my Diamondback, this has the adjustable shock assembly. So you can see written right here, we have minimum, mid, and firm. That adjusts the firmness of the shock. So if I really want to get crazy with it, I can just flip that over to firm. That essentially tightens up this rear end and makes it very easy to pedal up a hill, almost as if I'm riding a rigid bike. Well, plus the added weight of the rest of the suspension. But nonetheless, this literally locks up the rear end. But I don't need to do that. I found it was unnecessary. This bike, with its CVA suspension, constant variable arc, as they call it at Niner bikes, is amazing. It's a unique link system, unlike anything I've seen. So the Horse Link, this unit up here, very common. A lot of bikes are using these. Norco, Transition, big brands. It's a common thing. Where they differ, though, is if you go down to the back here, at where the hub and the derailleur mount is, this area here on a lot of the other bikes has a pivot point in this corner somewhere. This bike doesn't. It's completely rigid at that corner. So essentially, this whole rear triangle pivots much like a car's suspension. The whole unit goes up and down, and the arc changes. So the relation of the tire to the frame, it doesn't come up closer to the frame. It doesn't swing on a pivot like that. It actually goes almost straight up and down. Very linear, very... it's just a comfortable suspension. It's amazing. And you can see, because it doesn't have that rear pivot point, it pivots down here underneath the suspension, or underneath the frame rather, right at the bottom bracket. Very cool stuff. Very cool stuff. I'm impressed. So pedaling efficiency of a 100 millimeter trail cross-country bike, but in a full suspension, mid-long travel-ish enduro bike. I mean, it's wild. It's cool. One thing I want to point out as well. This is an amazing little gizmo. This here is an MRP ramp control. So for those of you that aren't familiar with what MRP is doing here, I'll kind of give you a quick little rundown. These shocks are designed to have volume spacers that go down inside this stanchion. And they effectively change the airspace inside that tube. So you can add more or less air, but fill up the space, basically, without having to apply more air. So you have to bear with me. I'm not an engineer by any means, but essentially, you're putting solid objects down inside this tube. They link together, and they take up airspace. And it basically allows the fork to feel a little bit more bottomless. It doesn't bottom out as easily. It makes it a little sharper on the progressive feel. So the problem with that, the only way to change those bottomless tokens out, as they call them, is to remove the cap and the valve body here. Major pain in the ass. So imagine being out on the trail and you're trying to have a fun ride with your friends and you find that your suspension's a little saggy, a little sluggish, and you add some air, but now you have too much air and it feels too springy. The only resolve is put more bottomless tokens in. How are you going to do that? You really can't. Not unless you bring your entire toolkit out, remove this entire cartridge, which, mind you, if you get dirt in there or do something, you're hosed. And yeah, it's just a pain. With this, it's a simple click of the dial. I just turn this, and it basically adjusts my air volume on the fly. It's amazing. It's $130 at your local bike shop, worth every penny. It is a time saver, a life saver, and you can really dial in your suspension with it. Totally awesome. Yeah, that's about it. I hope you guys like it. It's a big upgrade for me. I'm super happy. I've already taken it out to Galbraith out in Bellingham, Washington, and just tore the trail up with this beast. As you can see, it's not really dinged up, so that means I must have survived. Albeit barely. Scared myself a couple times there. But yeah. All right. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a good one and safe trail riding. Bye.